The Transfiguration that is in our liturgical calendar today is not something that many of my colleagues I have experienced choose to take up as an opportunity to speak. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because it seems so ethereal. You know, there's not this parable concreteness or imagery of stuff we know how to touch. It's kind of like it's a fantasy, you know, some kind of weird thing that happened. But to what end? Well, as we heard in today's gospel, Jesus takes 3 of his disciples and goes to a mountaintop. They ascend to the vast silence that inhabits such remoteness. It is upon the mountaintop we hear that Jesus is transfigured and time is transformed. The figure of Jesus in this scene seems to provide continuity with the past and hope for the future. If you listen carefully, did you notice that the disciples actually sleep deeply through the whole Elijah, Moses, Jesus having a conversation moment? Somehow we tell the story. Because it's in their half-asleep awakeness that they see Jesus' glory and 2 people standing with him. Peter speaks, and as if his voice clouds the vision of the disciples, from within such clouded vision, though, we hear the voice, and the voice names Jesus as God's own, the chosen one, bestowing him voice of authority. And the vision fades. Jesus is standing alone, and the disciples are told not to say anything to anyone. Despite this, we are still telling the story. The Transfiguration story straddles time as we know it. It breaks open the usual limits of our perception. It offers us a vision through and beyond our lineal conception of time and history. It suggests there's an interconnection of existence beyond our brief span of years. Early in my adult life, I was concerned, and at times I think probably consumed, with the pursuit of evidence to reassure me that there was more to existence than just the passing occupation of a busy life. Along that journey, I encountered the deep tradition of prayer and spirituality and mysticism, part of the rich heritage that we inherit. I learned stories of the very human people of that tradition that tell us we can know and experience the intimacy of relationship with a very much alive God. I want to share a snippet with you, just a piece of one of those stories. I don't know if any of you have come across the story of Seraphim of Sarov. Probably more of an Eastern Orthodox tradition. This account is told, or has been recorded, by someone called Nicholas Motovalov. He was a merchant in the 17th century in Russia. He and Seraphim, his spiritual companion and teacher, had been discussing how you can be sure that you're dwelling in the Holy Spirit. After much talk, Motovalov responded, "Nevertheless, I do not understand how I can be certain that I am in the Spirit of God. How can I discern for myself God's true presence in me?" He continues to write, "Then Father Seraphim took me very firmly by the shoulders and said, 'We are both in the Spirit of God now. Why don't you look at me?' I replied, 'I cannot look because your eyes are flashing like lightning. Your face has become brighter than the sun, and my eyes ache with pain.' Seraphim said, 'Don't be alarmed. Now you yourself have become as bright as I am. You are now in the fullness of the Spirit of God yourself. Otherwise you would not be able to see me as I am. But why do you not look me in the eyes? Just look. Don't be afraid. God is with us.' After these words, I glanced at his face, and there came over me an even greater reverent awe. imagine in the centre of the sun, in the dazzling light of its midday rays, the face of a man talking to you. You see the movement of his lips and the changing expression of his eyes. You hear his voice. You feel someone holding your shoulders, yet you do not see his hands. You do not even see yourself or his figure, but only a blinding light spreading far around for several yards, and illumining with its glaring sheen both the snow blanket which covered the forest glade and the snowflakes which besprinkled me and the great elder. You can imagine the state I was in. "What do you feel now?" Seraphim asked me. "How lovely." "In what way lovely? So quiet, such..." "What else?" "Such joy. My heart rings with it." "What else?" "Warmth, a glowing warmth." "What else?" "A heavenly scent." Reflecting the light, Seraphim's eyes sparkled. "The grace of God is in you, and you are in it. If only you could see how your face shines. Will you always remember the grace that has been lavished on you?" And I said, "In me, not even a monk." "That's nothing," said Seraphim. "It is to the person, not to their state or condition, that God says, 'Child, give me your heart.' If we give it, God comes." Why would I tell you such a story? Why would I recount it? Perhaps because of its resonance with the Transfiguration imagery. It suggests that God's breaking in isn't confined to historical time or special people or just to a book. Perhaps to challenge the ways that we, like Peter, resist hearing such a thing, as if we want to limit our ways of knowing the experience of God's presence to fit what we know. In the Transfiguration story, the three figures are paused in that moment. Those from the past stand with those in the present, together, looking forward. So it is, we stand in the feet of those who've gone before us. We are because they were. So it is for those who will come after us, whether of blood or interweb of relationship. We reap what has been sown, and we sow what will be reaped. We are foundationally interconnected. Reflecting thus, I was much taken with some words that Simon Wilson wrote. Reflecting on a Matariki morning at Te Mahurihuri Marae in Point Chef, this is what he wrote. He had also been to a rally of Winston Peters' party, where he experienced a lot of very angry older men, I have to say, it was men. But he wrote this, of the marae. "Most of the young people I was with can look forward to steep student loans, difficult career prospects, and a limited chance at home ownership. They know that health, education, housing, transport, water services, welfare, environmental protections, and more suffer disturbing levels of dysfunction. They didn't cause any of that. They inherited a social crisis from their parents and grandparents, who built their new and better world while insisting on low tax and public debt, which led to decades of underfunding. They also know there's a good chance the world will become catastrophically dangerous in their lifetimes because of the climate crisis. They didn't cause this either. And they didn't spend the last 30 years refusing to acknowledge it. But they will have to deal with it. And for many of them, simply by virtue of their race, they and their families are likely to earn less money, become ill across almost every health indicator, including mental health, be arrested and go to prison, be excluded from home ownership and career promotion, and die younger in their own country. If you want to talk about people whose country is no longer theirs, it's Māori. If you want to put it in generational terms, it's young people. But on Saturday morning, they weren't grumpy or bitter or angry. Love was in the air because manaakitanga, the mutually reinforcing expression of care, buoyed everyone there. The event began and ended with karakia, not because everyone was religious or being forced to pretend they were, but because karakia is a way to invite the kaupapa of respect. It reminds us we are part of something bigger. It asks that we bring our humble and best selves to the place and occasion. Short-term thinking and planning isolates us, causes us to forget. Actually, I think it's more intentional than that. We do it because it's easier and more immediately gratifying. We prefer not to experience the inconvenience, the weight and the heft of responsibility for the things we've done, for the way things are. As if the disrupting violence, the malaise and dis-ease of enacted social disregard, spiking mental health statistics, fear politics and terrifying climate and crisis realities, as if they're nothing to do with us. Someone somewhere else did it. We other those things. But they express the way things are. We are part of the way things are. But let's not fight or flee or freeze from sense of blame or shame. Rather, let's pause. Let's step into the still point moment of transfiguration. Be present. We are, because of what has been. It is in us. Who we are is immersed and embraced in the warm glow of divine presence in this transfiguration moment. It is in us to express this in the world. For that which is to come flows in and through us. We are not unknowing in the future we choose to enact. We know every choice we make has impact and reverberates in our world. We can choose in a way that makes a difference. To reiterate Susan's words on the occasion of Matariki, the big question is, what difference do we want to make?